am Anna Heneghan. I work in the recruitment industry, but in particular, I help with AI, data science and machine learning recruitment. My role day to day is very much kind of speaking with candidates, speaking with clients, just kind of partnering people together. I have chosen to kind of produce this series speaking to some of the leaders in this area and talking about the topic of diversity in technology. And today I have Priscilla Boyd, who's very kindly joined me for this. She's currently a senior engineering manager at iTech Media, specifically working in data analytics, AI and machine learning. Previously at Siemens and studied software engineering at the University of Oxford. So having a very high bar today. We want to talk about this topic, and I'm just going to provide some statistics to start with, just to kind of show and paint a picture of what the tech scene looks like right now. So PwC has said 3% females say career in technology is their first choice. 78% of students can't name a famous female working in technology. 16% of females have had a career in technology suggested to them, as opposed to 33% males. And 5% of leadership positions in the technology sector are held by women. And so hence that kind of is a full circle to why we're talking about this today, because it is a huge issue and it's really important to talk about it openly. And I think the best people to talk about it are the people who experience it day to day. So yeah, we just want to talk about why it's not diverse, how we can make it more diverse, and how we're going to get there, really. So with that being said, if you could, I know I've said a few things, but if you could introduce yourself, Priscilla, and kind of who you are and what you do.
Yes, thank you, Anna. Thanks for having me, first of all. So I'm Priscilla Boyd. I work at iTech Media as a senior engineering manager, leading our data tribe. And as you put there earlier, focusing very much on anything relating to data, whether that is data engineering, software engineering, focus on data, or things like AI, machine learning, bringing it to our company. And I just really find so interesting the statistics that you brought from PwC, and they're really sad statistics, right? Let's be honest. As a female in engineering, I just want to see more of us. I would just want to see more diversity and more women in engineering. I think it's going to be a process, right? I think over the years, it's been changing. I mean, I compare to when I grew up. I was very fortunate to have parents that always encouraged me to try things out, and they wouldn't necessarily label, computers as a thing for the boys. And unfortunately, a lot of other families, and indeed friends of mine, they would have that like preconception. So I think that's kind of continued throughout the years, right? Some people grew up with that perception, so they started tailoring their education with other things in mind, because engineering wasn't necessarily for women. And I think it's definitely we're at this point now where we're talking more about it. This is definitely something very important. There's more awareness, and I think that we're at the stage where we're seeing a little bit of a shift, but it might take a little bit of time until we actually see a more equal split. But it's very sad statistics there, I say.
Yeah, really sad. I think it's working day to day in it from the recruitment perspective, I do definitely see that, because the majority of the people I speak to are males and typically white males as well. So there's kind of two different kind of diversity issues within that. And it is really important to kind of flag these issues and talk about them. That I think the only way you often change things is from within, and actually having really open conversations about experiences as well. They are sad statistics, but from your kind of background, what kind of motivated you about computers? Where did that passion start?
Yeah, so that started when I was really, really young. When I grew up, my parents had a computer at home. My dad every now and then would work from home. So when I was about 5, I started just fiddling around, exploring Windows 3.11 at the time. and just playing about. And it's just one of those things. Over the years, you this is just becoming kind of natural. It's just a hobby, something that you have at home, so you're making use of it, and you're not necessarily even considering that as a career. In fact, I actually didn't consider software engineering as a career until I had already started a different course at university and realizing that that wasn't the thing for me, even though I had built websites, even though I had actually worked at a web agency at the time that I was studying a different course. So, for me, I started really by having the exposure to a home and also having the encouragement of my parents to just go out and try stuff out. Doesn't matter whether that is going outside and exploring the outdoors and learning something there, or stay inside doing something a little bit more arty, or indeed playing on the computer. So it's kind of like getting that variety until I figured out, well, actually, I really like this stuff. And because, growing up, I was very much obsessed with Lego and Playmobil at the time. Those weren't really for me. I just wanted to build things. And it kind of continued there when I realized that actually it doesn't necessarily need to be a piece of hardware that I can build. Is actually software that can make that hardware more useful. And that was the nice thing about it. But yeah, it's definitely a process, and I think there will be some change throughout the years. But you touched on the recruitment piece there, and I think it's really, really so important that we take action, right? We can't just wait for a number of years until things change. There's definitely stuff that we can do now. So, for instance, in my current role, we're increasing the size of the team quite substantially. Diversity is a focus. It is a goal. It's not just a matter of attending the odd diversity event, being aware of it. It's also about also trying to bring more diversity to the pipeline. By all means, at iTech, we've got all sorts of different practices that when a candidate comes through the pipeline, we're treating them exactly the same way. It's fair. We're trying to host diverse interview panels as much as we can. We have consistency in terms of what questions we ask of candidates, so we can evaluate them the same way. And also making sure that we have like consensus-driven decision making when it comes to hiring. But fundamentally, you need more diversity in the pipeline. So making sure that you also put in the effort to find, whether that is through events or agencies that specialize in that, and making sure that you're bringing diversity to the pipeline in first place. Because otherwise, yes, the process can be fair, but if the pipeline is no different, then you're not solving the problem. You're just waiting it and being reactive. So yeah, lots that can be done for sure.
Yeah, I think there is honestly so much that can be done. And I think it's about what people almost need to change the narrative in their head, that it's not a case of, oh, we're just trying to get as many women as possible into technology and they don't need all the skills. We just want to hire as many as possible just to kind of save face and have that kind of diversity on their books. It's actually thinking, what value do I get from a very diverse work like team environment, I think. And actually thinking there's so much that I can get, so many different experience, so many different skills to the table. And that's the value, actually committing to it because you see the value in that diversity rather than committing to it so that people aren't going to call you out for having a lack of diversity in your company. And it's about doing everything rather than, doing an odd talk here and there, or, finding kind of a company and, pledging like allegiance to like that. So it's about having the whole full scope, I think. But how have you found it? Is it from kind of just interviewing? I guess we're kind of going off topic here, but interviewing, have you found it kind of difficult in terms of kind of sourcing more diverse candidates? Do you kind of see it firsthand through your interview process, how that kind of lacks in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, by all means, we've changed a little bit of the process since I came in to try and enable like finding more diverse candidates. In truth, have to also appreciate that some fields in some locations, some countries or cities, diversity may not necessarily be easy. So one of the things that we did is open up some of the jobs. In fact, all of our jobs can be either UK or Poland based, either London based or Warsaw based, because that's where we have offices, but also remote. And we are looking at the possibility of offering roles for other countries as well. And the idea there is, by you opening up the locations, us being a remote first team to start with, the idea is that we can actually look for people with diverse backgrounds, different perspectives. And when I talk about diversity, it's also important to flag that it's not just about the gender diversity, right? It's neurodiversity, is looking at other people with other disabilities and other backgrounds that may not necessarily have had the same opportunities that we've had. And it's really, really important, right? It's getting that mix. But opening up the locations, giving that flexibility in terms of remote working. By all means, what I'm saying to my team is, you guys want to go into the office when it's safe, go. You don't want to go, it's okay. We're gonna try and find ways where we can meet up once in a while, once it's safe and everyone is comfortable. But until then, we can be flexible, and you can be remote as much as you want and need. It's not a problem. And then the last piece, Anna, that is also important, because that's something that we've changed recently, is how we interview. So before, especially for some of the technical roles, we would have some extensive tests that we would ask candidates to take home. And if you're thinking of diversity, you also need to appreciate that some people don't have the spare time to dedicate to some of those tests, right? They have other commitments. They might have family commitments that they just can't drop because of an interview coming up, and then it puts that stress and that issue around well-being, which we don't want to see. It's not what we're promoting within the company. So what we've done is we've tailored our interview process, so it's very much more of a interactive, working together to try and solve problems like we would do in the office, like we would do over Zoom, but within the team, in a way that we can still explore the candidate's knowledge and approach to solving the problem within the team, without having to put that extra pressure on taking time off, because you have to prepare and do some work up front. So it's really thinking about diversity from using tools like Gender Decoder for job descriptions, so that you're using the gender neutral language as much as you can, all the way through actually getting the people in and making sure that you're fostering diversity thereafter. It's not just a matter of getting diverse candidates in. There's a whole process that you need to do if you're really going to try and change this now, rather than just wait 20 years until things have changed.
That's really interesting, because I think, even from my perspective, a lot of the time it's, let me just find more diverse candidates. I don't often think about that interview process. I mean, I have done polls on LinkedIn where a huge amount of people are saying, got 4+ hour test to take home. It's just not achievable, especially if you've got a full-time job. And we all know, having a full-time job, it just comes with its really, really, you don't actually have the time, and you want to come back at the end of the day and relax and not do 10 million different types of tests. So I think that's a really interesting thought process, and just kind of changing up the interview process so it does allow more candidates to kind of actually take the time to show their skills, but not, if they can't do the test, then they're out the interview process entirely, because that does happen quite often. Do you feel as though you have to really quickly secure candidates? Do you feel as though the market moves really fast these days, and you have to really push for that to go in a week or two?
Yeah, I mean, as a rule of thumb, we're trying to do that. We're scaling, right? We're growing very quickly, and we have a number of roles to fill. So by all means, we are also trying to make sure that the whole experience for the candidate, no matter whether that is a candidate with a diverse background or not, that they are getting through the whole process as quickly as possible. Now, of course, there are some challenges in there, especially for us. We're a new team, and we are still, some people in the team are new to the whole interviewing process. So it's a matter of also getting them trained up, make sure that they're comfortable. So we're working on trying to minimize that time as much as possible. But by all means, we know that diversity is something that other companies are taking very seriously. Some of them are putting targets out there. We don't take that approach, right? We don't have targets per se. We also don't have quotas. What we want is to increase the diversity on the pipeline. And for us, as part of that, is making sure that we have as reduced of a time for the process to go through from start to finish as quickly as possible. But we're applying that as a business for any candidate, in truth, rather than just diverse ones.
Yeah, sorry, I'm stuck on mute. Yeah, I think that's the thing I've noticed as well, is there almost is kind of like a race for that candidate sometimes, and it's whoever gets past the line quicker sometimes. So I can understand for companies as well. There's so many difficulties around getting that hire in the first place. But I do think putting sometimes quotas and putting like almost KPIs to get more diverse candidates can almost cause its own problems, and everyone wants to feel valued and everyone wants to feel as though they got the job because they were the best candidate for the job. And I strongly believe, in tech, I don't really think you can just hire someone because they have to actually have the skills, like soft and hard skills, to do that job. So I do think, sometimes thinking, oh, it's just a case of getting as many people in as possible. In tech, you have to be able to code and you have to be able to essentially pass whatever tech test you do, whether it's a deep technical dive into their experience, etc. You have to be good enough. So that's, I think, really important. And in terms of kind of what you think that at the root of the problem, do you think what you touched on initially of just not thinking that it was a female or any type of diversity issue, was it not the sort of career that you would initially jump to, or would you say the problem is at the core for tech?
Do you mean in terms of just why are we not seeing more
yeah, essentially just I didn't explain that very well. That's my fault.
No, not at all.
I guess what would you say is the problem with not getting enough diverse candidates in? Would you say it starts at the sort of academic side, or what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, and I mean, that's something else that we've done, is looking at job descriptions and thinking about your requirements a little bit more, and thinking about the why you ask for certain things. Let me give an example. We don't actually have requirements when it comes to degrees or things like that on purpose. And the reason for it is because you could have had, like, maybe you had amazing education and you decided to move like fields altogether, or maybe you didn't have that opportunity. Not all of us had that privilege of having a good education to start with, and it's not fair, right? So by all means, that doesn't mean you couldn't do a job. So it's also making sure that you pick things like that. So if you're putting there that you require someone with a computer science degree, why is it that you need? Is it just proof that you can do the work? Because I've come across amazing people who are self-taught, who didn't have a degree and did the job very, very well. And sometimes even better than someone who had like lots of education behind them. So it doesn't necessarily mean that by you having the education that you have those skills, and vice versa, right? So I think part of the reason why we don't have as many women in engineering, in truth, right now, is because some of those requirements, they're assuming that everyone is going through this process, which, if I look for when I was growing up, women weren't really encouraged to take up engineering topics. STEM organizations like STEMnet didn't even exist. And I think this is changing, right? But it's also for organizations to not just say, okay, I'm just going to try and get diverse candidates for this role. Think about your requirements. Like, think about the level, that person that you actually need to fulfill the job. Think about how you're going to grow that person to learn new skills and progress and become more senior, rather than the mindset of like, I'm just going to be able to fulfill this role with senior candidates only that had this computer science degrees with a first class honors. And then you're like lowering and lowering the pool of potential diverse candidates you can actually get. So it's really important to think of the why, rather than just putting the requirements out there because you think it's what you need.
That's so interesting. That is actually so true. The amount of times I've seen computer science, maths, or a similar topic. And that is really difficult because I've spoken to a candidate recently who she she did languages at really top university, but she decided, actually, I really want to kind of delve into the front end and full stacky market, and she started doing internships, and then she started working in industry, and actually has now just completed a master's in computer science, kind of, I think 3 or 4 years after. But just not being pushed in that direction. And a lot of people, personally, myself, I did American literature and history. So I would just think it's too late for me now. I think I'd be terrible because I just don't have the science mathematical capability in my head, but I know a lot of people would. But it's that thought of it's too late for me now. I've made my choice. I did what was probably more stereotypical in terms of literature or history or an art subject, and it is too late for me. And I think that sometimes is the narrative that you don't think you're too far gone and you have to kind of stick to that career. So it's really great that you don't kind of narrow it down in the job specs really, because then it makes you think, oh, actually, they will give me a chance. And then you kind of take it from there. In terms of, the statistics we spoke about earlier, does that paint quite an accurate picture for you of just working over the years that you've been working and being a leader as well and a manager in tech? Does that paint quite an accurate picture for you?
Unfortunately, it does. I mean, look at role models in technology, right? We talk about Steve Jobs, we talk about Bill Gates, we talk about all of these guys who build amazing things that impact us, and very grateful for their work, don't get me wrong. But you don't hear people who talk about, females in engineering or the Grace Hoppers of the world. If you ask a lot of people out there, they still don't know who these people are. And it's still a reality today, right? It's still a reality. Unfortunately, if you look at senior leadership roles out there, most companies, you look at their management boards, they won't necessarily have an equal split of men and women anyway. And obviously there is a historical reason, etc. But that doesn't mean that you can become just like complacent with it and say, yeah, it is what it is. That's the worst answer that you can give to the situation. You have to really think about, okay, what it is that is in my remit to try. Is it encouraging someone that I know who maybe has thought about doing something with computers and hasn't really gotten any guidance or any support? Is it talking to someone in your company about what it is that the company is actually doing about diversity, not just diversity events? What is it they are actually doing to bring more diverse people with diverse backgrounds into your company? What it is that they do to include people, more on the inclusion piece as well. It's not just about diversity, right? And making sure that like people at different levels, different industries, they can still talk about it. And you don't necessarily need to be just a woman to talk about it either. Like I have some really, really nice guys that work with me who are very, very much pro diversity, and they are too also bringing this topic and talking about it and raising the importance. And sometimes they're in roles of influence, which is even more important, right? Because other people see them as role models. So yeah, unfortunately, the statistics I see the same. When we're looking for software engineer candidates, I mean, we've got a bunch of open roles right now. It's harder to find, but as I say, you have to put in the effort. There's things that you can do, and I'm sure it will pay off with time, but the effort needs to be there, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think so as well. It's not just kind of surface level. You have to go deeper into the issue, whether it's looking at your job adverts, whether it's like the structure of your company and allowing people to kind of progress within that own company and giving them a chance. So there are loads of things. I think it doesn't just start with an interview, it starts beyond that. So that's really important as well. Are there any kind of challenges that you've had to overcome in your career, whether it's being, I guess, taken seriously or kind of just any other obligations that you had to kind of come up against?
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, multiple times in throughout my career. Fortunately, not now, but throughout my career, I've had episodes where because you're a woman, maybe people are feeling more comfortable to talk over you when we are in a meeting, or they might assume that you might not necessarily have known something because you're a woman, you might not have had that experience, or indeed situations where, like in my case, not necessarily relating to gender, but people always comment, "Oh, you look so young," as if it means I'm not experienced enough, and that's not the case. And to be honest, I'm also of the opinion that age doesn't necessarily mean experience either. So by all means, during my career, I've had to deal with a myriad of those things, and it's a matter of like as you grow, being a little bit more conscious of it, calling people out if there is something that you think that that you wouldn't have done that to another colleague, would you? And even things like, Anna, I worked before in multinationals, people whose language, my first language isn't English, my first language is Portuguese, and working with people whose first language also isn't English, sometimes they refer to engineers in the he or his pronouns way. So like, oh, I'm sure we can find software engineer and he will be great at this. And it's a matter of also addressing that, picking on it. Why do you say he? Really, it could be a she, it could be a they. Don't know. And it's really important to like give that immediate feedback and like on the spot. If you see something, whether there's specific to yourself or whether there's just bias, that you also call it out as you perceive, rather than just taking it in and saying, oh no, that person thinks that a good engineer looks like a guy, because it might not necessarily be. It might be, but it might not necessarily be either.
Wow, I didn't know about the pronunciation of even just, I mean, that just shows it to its core, doesn't it, really, the fact that it's he. So you don't even think that you're able to join that career from probably very young age, just learning a language. So that's really shocking, but so good to know, because that's, again, something I would never have known. I guess on the flip side, just because obviously we want to make sure, it is an absolutely amazing career, and I do think, calling people out and just being really honest about how you feel, it's not a sign of weakness or sensitivity, it's just kind of letting people know how that makes you feel and why it is not the right thing to do. What would you say the highlights of your career have been, or what have been the kind of, I'm sure there's been many, but is there any particular points where you think, well, this is such an awesome career to take that?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of things that I'm proud of during my career. I think if you're thinking on the diversity side, like I was very fortunate to have built and worked with a very diverse team previous to my current role, and that was a team that was started from zero, and we had to build the team like to its full capacity. And again, making sure that diversity is a goal, is not a nice to have, is actually a must have from the beginning. So I'm proud of that piece. I'm also proud of some of the work that I've done. Prior to joining iTech, I worked in transportation for a long time, and I got to work on some really incredible projects with really amazing people, again, diverse backgrounds all over the world, whether that was working with traffic infrastructure, all the way to connected and autonomous vehicles, all the way to going to America and then focusing more on the machine learning for transport. But I would say, it's difficult to pick just one. I would say that one moment that was very like defining for my career was when I got the invite to do a TEDx talk in Oxford about driverless cars. And that for me was great, right? It was a topic that I was very passionate about, still am. I think it can change our lives for the better in many respects. I start by talking about how my grandmother, when she was alive, she had a car accident when she was in her 80s, and she had her license taken away from her, and as a result, she couldn't drive anymore. And that had a huge impact on her as a person, and that had a huge impact on her independence, on her mental health. Had she had a driverless car taking her around, that would have been none, right? And for me to be able to get some of those messages across in an event like that for a few thousand people in an auditorium, and change completely, learning a lot about how to present and talking a little bit about the era that I was like working on at the time, was really quite nice. So I'd say probably the TEDx talk is one of my proud moments. But yeah, I've just been very fortunate to work with amazing people, is the truth. Every single team I've worked with, I've had really, really great people around me, and really diverse people, just like me. I was born in Brazil. I've been living in the UK for a while, went to the US, came back to the UK. I come from a half Brazilian, half Japanese family. So for me, like, diversity is in me too. So it's really quite key. And yeah, all fits together really.
Yeah, that's amazing. I do believe in the saying, like, you are the company you keep, and the people you have around you, they'll often accept what you'll accept, and they won't accept also what you won't accept. So you have that kind of support, and yeah, I think that's amazing. And I think it's really important to have a strong working force that not only kind of helps you on the day-to-day, software engineering or whatever that may be, but also kind of has the same values as you and understands how important, it is to have a diverse team around you. Do you ever feel any, as being a woman leader in tech at the moment, do you feel any pressure sometimes? Do you feel as though you kind of have to kind of keep to a certain way, or do you feel that at any point, just because there is a lot of attention on diversity, and obviously you are unfortunately one in probably 100, 200 plus? Do you feel that you have the pressure at times to kind of uphold a certain way, or?
Probably not anymore. I think I've definitely learned this over the years, and I'm very, very proud of it now, that like it's a matter of finding what is my own style, right? Like what bringing myself to work, and when I say like properly myself, rather than pretending I'm someone who I'm not because it might be perceived wrong. By all means, by no means of imagination, I'm not perfect. I will make mistakes, and I will have my way of dealing with the challenges. And I love working with people collaboratively and tackling the problems with the teams and the people around me. I think it's really important to me personally. But I mean, there's definitely been situations in my life where I wasn't like this, where I would maybe dress a certain way or talk a certain way or use certain terms because, the people in the boardroom are doing the same. And I think over time, I realized that actually there is just so much value for me as a human being to be the authentic self that I am at everywhere I am, not just at home. Like I don't understand the people, and by all means, there's a lot of people out there, and it's their choice. But for myself, I don't understand this. It's one persona at home and one persona at work. I am exactly the same both places, and yeah, I think over the years I grew to understand that that was okay. But I still see even nowadays, people who are especially like a bit early in their career, that they're being put in some corporate spaces, and they're just basically becoming the space that is around them. So the environment is really shaping who they are. And I think when it comes to going back to the statistics that you showed right at the beginning, when you have less women to base yourself on as a woman, having less female role models out there, all you can do is mimic what the other role models that you have around, which are men. And some of them will have similar approaches, some of them will have different approaches, but it's a matter of finding like what is true to you and continue that on the journey, no matter whether you are at a coffee machine chat when it's safe and you're in the office, or whether you're in an important meeting with very senior people. I think it's just really important to be yourself.
Yeah, I think that really rings home to me. Like, it really makes me think of me, because I basically have a team myself, but I sometimes take on, I think in the past more so when I first was leading a team, even thinking about it, you kind of take on, I guess, masculine traits because that's who you're exposed to a lot of the time. And technology is not the only industry that suffers from diversity, or a lack of diversity. Recruitment, is sales, and then sales is very male heavy, which I think sometimes you kind of think I have to be very unemotional. You almost have to be exactly the opposite of what people expect you to be, to really bring home to them that you are ready for this position and you're qualified for this position, and you're not going to be the stereotypical woman, which is actually fine to be that, because that what is the problem with being a stereotypical woman, and or not being, just being yourself is completely fine. But sometimes I think I have played up to being more masculine, or what is perceived as being more masculine, in order to be taken seriously. So I think that's really interesting what you said there, because I think it's not just a tech issue. That's just probably a woman leader. Do I have to act like this in order to be taken seriously? And hopefully, as time goes on, you get more comfortable in your own skin, and you get more comfortable in a leadership position to where you think, being myself will just be fine. I don't have to be these two separate personalities, one at home and one at work. So that's really interesting you said that. I think a lot of people probably can relate to that too.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. And the other thing that I thought was quite cool coming into iTech is when we have our onboarding week, which we call Accelerate Week. It's very intense, lots of activities, really fun. One of the things that they encourage us to do is take the 16 personalities test. So if you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs types, um, Myers-Briggs Type Indicators, MBTI. There you go. Got it there eventually. They encourage you to take that test. And actually, if you notice my name on Zoom, I actually have my type in here. And the idea is that you also have the visibility of other people's types. So you also learn a little bit more about their preferred style, their strengths, their weaknesses, maybe something to be aware of. It's just a matter of being aware. We're all different. And the same applies to leadership, right? There are lots and lots of different leadership styles. It's finding what fits with you most naturally, and chances are you'll change throughout your life. My type actually has changed. I used to be an ENTJ for many years, and when I took this test, I was like, what? It's changed. Is now I'm an ENFJ. And I think it's also a matter of embracing who you are, making sure that you have as many data points as you can, and it's possible, not necessarily within your work environment, outside as well, and then finding what is true to you. I really believe in that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I've taken that test as well. I can't actually recall what I am, but I know what my team would be, which sometimes you like, it's not great that I know the type of my team members, but I don't even know my name. But yeah, that's really interesting. I think you do need to kind of be okay with what you want to be, and again, it's just about being true to yourself, and you don't have to have these multiple personalities for multiple different types of events that come up in a working day. Even like sales, I'd probably say that most people would say, well, you hate confrontation, you hate all of these things that are associated with sales. But I enjoy, on the flip side, I enjoy the interaction I have. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy learning things that I would never have learned. Like even today, I've learned so much from speaking with you that I would never know. So I think it's just not disqualifying yourself too early on. I think a lot of people, they'll read a job spec, and I've spoken about this a couple of times, but a lot of women, if there's 2 or 3 things that aren't in the job spec that they don't match, they won't apply. Whereas men will do the exact opposite. There could be lots of things that don't apply to them, but they'll apply anyway, and they'll give themselves that chance. So it's just about kind of opening yourself up, and not, you have so many skills. Everyone has all these different skills, and they're useful because another person might be lacking or might not have those skills too. So yeah, I think it's just an ongoing conversation. How would you describe like the tech scene right now? Have you seen like slow like movement towards this getting better at all?
I think it is getting a little better. I mean, especially when you talk about more of the data science, machine learning type jobs. What I've been finding is a lot of people who are coming with an interest in there have a little bit of a different background. They might not necessarily even have a computer science background at all. Maybe they've worked, in chemistry or physics or mathematics, or sometimes not necessarily even a STEM subject. Maybe they have worked with like languages, as you say, or indeed other like subjects that may not necessarily be, oh, this is obviously going to be a good fit for someone with an analytical mind, or whatever it is that sometimes you see out there. So I think it is getting better, Anna, because the other thing too, with platforms like Coursera or Udemy, and loads and loads and loads of resources, whether on YouTube or elsewhere, for free, that you can actually get started and learn. And it has become very accessible for you to actually get education on those topics. So it's really a matter of be interested, be curious, go out there and find something to try it out, or look for a boot camp or something like that you can get some exposure in a course that is much shorter than a proper degree, or a longer term course, that fits a little bit more of your schedule. So I think it is getting better as a result of the accessibility to some of those learning resources. And I think it's great, right? Going back to my question and my comment earlier around the requirements, there are so many of those courses out there. If someone has taken a bunch of them and they can do the job, why is it that you would compare those skill sets, and say that this is lesser than someone who has done a 3 year course? Maybe they have the same level of knowledge and interest and expertise, you know? So I think it is getting better, is the short to question. And I think it will get progressively better over the years as the mindset shifts as well.
Yeah, and what would you say is like the most value that you found from having a diverse working environment versus not having one? Would you say it's just kind of diversity of thought, or what would you say is that, but for anyone who, or for any company who's kind of doesn't take that much notice of it, what would you say is the value that you've had from having that sort of working environment?
Diversity of thought for sure, and by all means, if you're bringing someone who has worked with geophysics, for instance, to solve a problem in data science in a completely different. So we had that before, like in my previous role at Siemens, we had someone had a PhD in geophysics. She was working in data engineering, and every now and then she would bring some like applications from that field into transportation, even though they're very different. But the way to tackle the problem in geophysics could also be applied to transportation. So by all means, the problem solving can be way more creative when you have different data points, right? But I think it's also a matter of ways of working. It's making sure that you respect differences in not just the solutions, not just the problem solving piece, but also at a human level, right? We live in a very globalized world. There will be people from everywhere, and I think by having this environment within the team, that you can also exchange some interesting facts about where each person is from is indeed interesting. In my current team, I have someone from Nepal, and he will share stories, or his stories about his experiences in Nepal, and like the beautiful landscapes. He'll show us pictures, facts related to his religion, and all of this is like, I think, helping us build not just a team that is diverse in terms of where they came from, but also a more human team that actually knows each other, rather than just like the same. You come to work and you do the work and you don't get to know anybody and you go home, or in this case, you go to your desk and then you do some work and then you go back to another part of your house. So yeah, it's problem solving to an extent, but it's also like allowing people to connect on the human level, getting to know each other, getting to learn how to respect people, how to work with people that came from different background, and continuous learning after all.
Yeah, I think as well it's so important to not just think of it as like everyone brings like a skill to the table, and not it being so work focused. It's also about having that kind of social aspect, because if you have a team that gets on really well and really genuinely likes each other, you do better work because you actually support each other. You're willing to kind of sacrifice, okay, I'll take up an hour just to help you with this, and vice versa. Everyone's kind of sharing ideas, but also having a very almost like a support group where you all genuinely look forward to going in that day and having a great day, and if you make a mistake, that person will really support you through it and help you through it. Because I'm sure there are workforces out there that are so independent, and it's great to be independent, but everyone's just doing what they need to do that day, working till say 5 p.m. and going home, and it's just very kind of structured, and there's no kind of real flow to the conversation. It's just I'm doing this job to get it done. So yeah, definitely I would agree with that. And for someone from a more diverse background, whatever that may be, what advice, and I know this is a big question, so it might be a bit difficult, but what advice would you give someone coming into the industry? What would you say to them, just to, I guess, make life easier, or just something that you've learned along the way that's important?
I would say challenge the status quo, honestly. As cliche as this sounds, like, you want to work for a company and you know that you don't meet the requirements, reach out, let them know, I'm really interested, would love to work. I don't meet these requirements that you put it in there, but look at the experience that I had. I can prove to you I'm really eager. Show that you are interested. Reach out to them. Look for people who work for the company on LinkedIn. Reach out to their contact page on their website, you know, be proactive just by looking at an ad and saying, well, actually, I don't fit this and I'm not going to get it, is not going to be neither good for the person's career, nor is it going to be for their self-confidence, right? And I'll always tell the story, Anna, where when I was working as a systems engineer at the time, and I saw that product manager job at Siemens, and I looked and I was like, this is really cool. I think it would be so nice. I don't think I'm gonna get it, but I'm gonna apply anyway because who knows? And being honest, I didn't hear back for like 3 weeks, I think. And I was like, okay, well, they probably discarded my application. Out of the blue, someone phoned me and invited me for an interview. 2 weeks later, I had a job offer. And I always tell people, like, if you don't ask, you don't get. If you don't try, you won't get either. So by all means, challenge the status quo. If you see a job there that doesn't fit with what you have, reach out, show interest. I 100% will value a candidate that reaches out, not with a generic cover letter, honestly. Reach out and make it personal, make it human, and say, I don't meet this, but I'd love to work in this company, and this is how I can show that I've got the skills. And our process is then designed to, as I say, explore that the person can solve problems, work in a team setting, meets the culture of the company. We're not interested in what the list of huge courses that you've done, or the degree specifically. We're interested in your experience and your ability to do the work well in a good, fun environment like we have.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's just being fearless. And I think I always try and say to candidates when they're kind of on the fence about an opportunity that I think, you know, like you may not think you have two of these skills, but I've seen people interview for this role with the exact same profile and they've got really far down the line and or got the job as well. So I feel like, you know, it's just about being fearless and what is the worst that can happen. If you apply to a job and no one hears back, like you don't hear back and you don't even get the job or you don't get an interview, what is so terrible about that? You gain absolutely, you know, you might not gain anything, but you also don't lose anything either. And there's so much to potentially gain from that, just clicking that button, you know, reaching out and connecting with a few people on LinkedIn. The world is so open now, you can get in contact with so many people quite easily. So it's just about taking advantage of that. So I think that's really important as well. And this is kind of the last thing that I typically ask people just because I think it's really interesting. Where do you think you will be in 10 years' time from now?
10 years time, I will definitely be in the UK. I think I've been there, done that with the country moves. I don't think I want to move abroad anymore. Honestly, it was a great experience and I loved it. Met amazing people, but I think my poor cats didn't love moving back to the US and back to the UK. So in the UK, I mean, role wise, company wise, being honest, I don't know. I have lots of aspirations and things that I wanna work on for my own development. I definitely want to continue in data as a space that I absolutely love and I have loved since I had my first artificial intelligence module doing my bachelor's many moons ago. I want to continue in the space. What I'd like to hope though is that in 10 years' time I can look back and I can think of not only did I build diverse teams, but I also found ways to get people who challenged this status quo, who didn't necessarily meet the criteria that we were asking for a job, that came in and then suddenly they are actually really progressing their careers and they're doing amazing and they're doing the same for generations to come. That's what I'd like to hope in 10 years' time.
That's amazing. I think being part of the transition and knowing what you actually did to change things and not just, I guess, being kind of a bystander to it happening and just hoping for change and actually being part of it. And by everything you've said today and just even like sharing your own career journey, I think that's so important because if you can't name someone in tech that is a woman or is from a BAME background, for example, you know, that's a huge problem. So just actually seeing and hearing from people who are kind of continuously rising up through the ranks like yourself and doing some really cool things along the way, I think that's, you know, for anyone who might be watching or reading or listening to this, you just hope that that would be inspirational, and I think it definitely is. So yeah, that's what I have to say, and I think you definitely will look back in 10 years' time and think that for sure. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much for today and speaking with me and being so open and honest about everything. And yeah, I really, really appreciate your time because I know you are probably the busiest woman on earth. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for this.
No, 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 not a problem. And thank you for having me and the opportunity. I really appreciate it. This is a topic that is really important to me. I love the fact that you're doing this. I think it's really, really important. Going back to it's not just a matter of, being aware and waiting, is also doing things and conversations like this, creating spaces like that for people like myself and others to come and share is really important. And I'm really appreciative of it, Anna. So thank you for having me. If I may say so, just one more thing. We obviously have a number of roles open at iTech Media in data, which is my space. My space, not the social network. My space is in my area. But yes, so if anyone is interested in a role in data, whether they come from a diverse background or not, please reach out. There's tons of opportunities out there, and it's a fun environment. I'm just entering my 4th month in the company, so I'm still very new, but there's lots of work to be done there, and it's really fun, and everyone is really really cool. But yeah, sorry about the sales pitch in here, but it's just we got lots and lots of opportunities out there, and if there is someone who comes from a diverse background that doesn't fit in with a role that we have, I'd love to hear from them too. But yeah, thanks once again. I really appreciate it.
No problem. No problem.